Okay, we're giving this a try. Get the camera down right. Hello, sorry about my hair because it's a mess, and I'm gonna turn off. Okay, one of my worst. Oh, hello. Okay, I'll get it. Okay, so one of my worst things is watching stupid Hallmark Christmas movies, and they started like last Friday. But the cool thing is that all the old ones are on now, so I'm enjoying watching that. But anyways, this is a Nancy pep talk, and I've thought about doing this video for a very long time, and I didn't even take notes because I just don't even think it's is everything all screwed up here? Probably. Um, I didn't put down notes because I thought it wouldn't come off for real, and I want this to be real because this is real. So this pep talk is to any persons out there that are still smoking cigarettes. I quit smoking successfully. I'll be celebrating 20 years on December 24th, which for anybody who has smoked for a long time in their lives, that's a really big deal. Yeah. I mean, I can't even walk you into how I got into it, and it doesn't matter. What matters is how I got out of it. And I just want to express to anyone out there that you can quit. And you don't need to do it with drugs. You don't need to replace the nicotine that you're inhaling with some other nicotine product, vaping, any of that. You really don't. If you really want off of it, this is my perspective only. This is not. I am not a medical doctor. I am not a certified, addiction person at all. I'm talking about my own personal experience and how I managed, I think, very well to finally quit smoking after so many years. So let's start with what happened. I woke up one morning. I had probably been out late. I was in hospitality, so, you go out and you drink after work. And I woke up, probably didn't feel all that great, and lit a cigarette because that's what you do. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I am so sick of this. Now, I'll admit that I think a lot of my company, the company that I worked for, when I started there, you could literally smoke in the building. We could smoke in the office. And then slowly but surely that started to go away. Our whole restaurant was a smoking restaurant. And then suddenly just we suddenly, how can I describe this? So we had this huge restaurant, but it was broken into like 2/3 and 1/3. There was this huge part of it. The bar, let's not even count that. Just this huge dining room and then this little kind of annexed area. So we started with the annexed area being the non-smoking area. And I want to say that, well, let's see, when did this start? Early 2000s. Trying to think, 89. Trying to think where I was. And anyways, probably 2000s, early 2000s. I don't think it was the law yet, but it was kind of we knew it was coming. So the little portion was the non-smoking area. We started to have such a long wait for the non-smoking area that we switched it. We made the big restaurant non-smoking. The bar was still smoking, but they were fairly separated, so that wasn't an issue. So the main restaurant became non-smoking. The little area became smoking. And then shortly thereafter, we just stopped it altogether because a lot of other people were, and it was just, I don't even know. I think we stopped it before it became the law in Washington State, but I could be wrong about that. Anyways, so, slowly but surely, the times were changing, and, smokers were being relegated out to the dumpster to smoke. Now, we actually had a smoking area, and we had a underground parking area that underground slash, it wasn't underground. It was like water level. We were on pardon me while this is how it always happens. Sorry. Water level, but it was, anyways, covered parking is the best way to describe it. And we had a little area there where we could still smoke. which was great. And you'd go out there and take a break and chit chat about the evening and how things are going, and kind of decompress it while you were up pressing with your cigarette. So I was just, and that's what I'd done forever. I mean, this was the first restaurant that had kind of banned it from the interior for employees. But anyways, so but times were changing, and I knew that. So anyways, I mean I knew that, but I wasn't being highly affected by it at that point. So anyways, I woke up this one morning and was just like, I just don't. I'm so sick of this. I want to stop. And I can tell you that I had stopped unsuccessfully twice. Was it twice? I guess I'm not going to call that first time a success. The second time, I was quit for a year and a half, but it took one moment of time to get me back on them. So I wasn't successfully quit. And a year and a half. And I've told this story before, but I walked in, I was living with roommates, and I walked in the door. One of them smoked. And I walked in, I'd had a particularly bad day, and she goes, "You look like you're pissed off." And I go, "I am." And she was sitting down watching something and having a glass of wine and a cigarette, and she was like, "You want to smoke?" And she was cool. She was like, "You want to smoke?" "Oh, sorry, I know, you quit. And I was like, you know what? No, I have quit, but one isn't going to kill me. And so I had that one cigarette with that glass of wine in the late afternoon, and I went out the next morning and bought a pack. Now, this was back in the day when cigarettes were not horribly expensive. So it was no big deal. I mean, they were like $1.10 or something. I mean, it was crazy. Anyways, so I started right again. I had no commitment. Apparently no commitment. So, fast forward to this day so let's see. It was 2004. So it would have been October. I'm kind of doing this about the same time I'm doing this. It was October of 2004. And I was in the process of helping, with my brother, helping to plan my dad and mom's birthday. My dad was going to be celebrating his 80th birthday. He was born in 1924. My mom was probably 1926, and so they were celebrating 78 and 80, and it was a big deal, and Dad wanted a party, and so I was organizing that planning down in Portland. And so anyways, so here it is, October, and I'm like, I want to quit. I want to be done with this, but I have to have a plan. I need a plan to be successful. And I was just hardcore set on being successful, which isn't enough when it comes to addiction of nicotine. And just other kind of habits that come along with frickin' smoking cigarettes. So, and of course, at this point, the cigarettes are like $4 a pack as opposed to $1. I mean, it was a chunk of change every month. But that was not a motivating factor. When you're addicted, that doesn't matter. And I was able to afford it, but that really wasn't a factor. It turned into a factor down the road, but I'll tell that story as well. But anyway, so I want to quit, and I don't know how. I'm going to have to figure this out. And I didn't want to go on. They had patches and drugs, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be over and done with it completely. I didn't want to supplement smoking and the nicotine that came along with it with a patch or something that was going to feed me the nicotine that I was trying to get off of. The habit of the nicotine, the addiction of the nicotine, and the habit of the cigarette. And those two are intricately combined. And I know if you haven't thought this out, think about it. It totally is. So this is going to be a long video, and I apologize, but I want to tell my story because it's important, I guess, kind of for me, and maybe it'll strike a nerve with somebody watching. And if it does, then Yahoo. So what was I saying? So anyways, so I wanted to do it, as they say, cold turkey, which is not easy. So I kind of started Googling. I had a computer. I was not very adept at it, but I thought I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I Googled around quitting smoking, blah, 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 blah. And I ended up on a website called Why Quit. I think it's whyquit.org. I will look it up. I think it's still functioning, and I'll put a link down below. So either whyquit.com or whyquit.org. And I got on their website, and it was a clunky kind of, 1989 website. You could just tell it was an older website, but it was chock full of info, and it ended up being kind of a remarkable resource for me, about kind of the plan you want to make, how you want to do it, and then kind of survivor stories, as it were, people talking about how they quit, and what was successful, what wasn't, things they experienced, blah 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 blah. It's a whole thing. It really is. And so I thought, okay, so I kept, every night I would get home, pour a glass of wine, light a cigarette, and get onto whyquit.org and reinforce in my mind what I needed to do to successfully quit. And basically, I could give you the top 5, but just I don't have that. I'm not that organized for that, because most people who decide to quit are not that organized. So I'm not going to give you a list. I'm going to tell you how I did it. I knew I needed a plan, and the plan was going to be, and I was very fortunate that I was able to make this plan. I knew that I needed to make a plan. So it wasn't going to happen in October. So when is it going to happen? I thought, well, I'm going down to my parents' place for this party that I'm planning. And then I'll be staying there for 2 weeks over Christmas, away from my normal routine, away from my condo, away from my work. And I'm very fortunate and lucky that I had that time. But I'd been with the company at that point for 21 years, and one of the things I'd earned is 4 weeks vacation. Very cool, very lucky, and I saved up to be able to take 2 weeks for this particular Christmas. That's not normally what I would do, but because of this party and and the whole family was coming up as a whole thing. So I thought, okay, here I've got a chunk of time, 2 weeks, where I'll be with non-smokers. I was going to be with my family. None of them smoked. Both my mom and dad smoked as younger people, but my dad quit smoking when he was probably in his 30s, and my mom finally quit when she was in her 50s. So, and my brother and his wife never smoked, and their little boy little boy, not smoking yet. So, and not smoking now, so yay for that. Anyways, so I thought, I'm going down for this birthday party. I'll be out of my normal routine. I will be around non-smokers completely. And it was always, when I went down for Christmas prior to that, it was always kind of it was not fun being a smoker, because I had to smoke at my parents', of course. Well, not that they didn't allow it in their home. I wouldn't allow myself to smoke in their home because they were not smokers. So I would go outside, and when I was around everybody, especially my nephew, I would never smoke. So it was just always a arduous task to be around them and smoke. So I thought, well, this is good, because this will just reinforce my decision to quit smoking. And I liked the fact that it was going to be a specific date that I would always remember, because it was going to be, both my parents were born on the same day. And I thought, well, okay, so December 22nd, 2004, that's my quit date. And so it was probably mid-October, probably about now. So October, November, December, I had 2.5 months to prepare. And I know that some of you might be out there going, you needed 2.5 months to figure this out. Yes, because it's not something you just do. It's not something you just decide and then make happen. There may be some out there that can do that. I was not one of them. And also, I had set my sights on being absolutely successful. There was just no question in my mind that was going to be the case. So I wanted to do everything I could in my power to set myself up for success. And if it was going to take 2.5 months to do that, then that's what I needed to do. And I'm not kidding when I say that every night I came home and went onto this website and just scrolled through their personal stories, scrolled through their at the time that I was there, I don't know what it's like now, I haven't been there in a long time, but it was just it was just chock full of information. They went after everything. The medical stuff, why you shouldn't smoke, which we all know. So I'm not even going to go there. We all know why you shouldn't smoke anymore. Come on. But at that time, so they had a whole section on that. Then they had a whole section on what your body will technically, physically go through. Not what your mind will go through, but what your body will physically go through. Things that occur, things that'll happen to you as you progress through your quitting, and or your quit, as they would call it. And so I was going to make my quit successful, and so I just force fed myself that stuff every single frickin' night, and I smoked regular as I would normally, but I knew that that date was coming, and then it came. And I smoked my last cigarette on December 23rd, probably when I was driving down to my parents' house, and threw the cigarettes away, the rest of them away. That was it. I was done. And for the 2 weeks I was there, it was actually not that hard. As I said, I was around non-smokers. I was motivated. I had been planning this for a couple of months. My headspace was just such that this is happening. No questions asked. But when I got back in my car to drive back to Seattle, the first thing I wanted was a cigarette. So that was a battle. It was hard. But I said to myself, 2 weeks, you've been quit for 2 weeks. You can do this. And here's the deal. Everybody says, oh, it only takes 3 days for your body to wean the nicotine. I don't know if that's true or not. But my cravings really, if that's reality, and I never went into it deeply, and maybe knowing that, whether it was true or not, was a good thing for me, because I was like, okay, I am weaned off the nicotine physically. But for me, it wasn't the physical. It was the mental. Incredibly, incredible amount of mental force. That was saying I wanted a cigarette. And it was really hard. And I can't honestly remember how hard I struggled with that. I felt pretty accomplished at 2 weeks. I thought that was really good. But when I got back to Seattle, the hardest part, I could actually get through being at work. That wasn't so hard. It was being at home, where you can kind of, you relax, you let your breath out. You don't have to be on stage anymore from your job. And I was definitely on stage in my job. And that was hard. And I told myself, and I probably read it on Why Quit. They said, if you need to substitute something other than cigarettes to get you through that isn't harmful in the long run to you, then you need to do it. And so I said, okay. And so I started eating ice cream. It was not a great thing. It didn't last. Let me say that. My second ice cream habit picked up after I was spending time with my dad when I was caregiving for him, but that was a long time after all of this happened. But so I kind of I needed sweets, something sweet. And I was going to say, the other thing I told myself was I was not going to give up other habits. So I liked wine. And they always say, if you're going to quit, stay away from the alcohol. Well, I wasn't going to quit cigarettes and my drinking wine all at the same time. That was like, why am I even trying? That's just stupid. I'm not going to try that. So it's like, I'm just going to focus on one thing at a time. So ice cream was my guilty pleasure. My hardest part was coming home from work, as I just said, because that's when I could really kick back, pour a glass of wine, have a cigarette. A lot of people say that it was the after dinner cigarette. I'll give you that too. That was a tough one. And I don't know why that particular cigarette is so popular. But whatever. I think it's habit. It's just pure habit. And so I went through a long stretch of just coming home and going and eating ice cream. Not a lot, but just a little bowl every night. So then you have to add on, and I'm pretty sure this was an add-on. I was going through this and going through menopause at the same time. So I was not a particularly happy person, but it was easy to chalk it up to the quitting. But at one point, a boss at work, after I just kind of I never exploded at a customer, but I explode in my office after, thank you very much for calling. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Click. Ah, rah, 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 and I'd bitch. And my, I didn't even know what he was. Human resources director was across the way from me. And he leaned over at one point. He goes, you okay? I'm like, yeah, fine. I'm just quitting smoking. Oh, sunflower seeds. That was another thing that kept me going at work. I lived on sunflower seeds in the shell. Lived on them. It was bad. It was bad. I mean, I literally replaced one addiction with another. I finally weaned off of those as well, but that was a lot easier. Anyway, so the menopause thing was I get these hot flashes, and it felt like there was a heat grate right above me, and it felt like this heat was just coming down, which I hadn't really connected at all yet. And I was like, God, is anybody else feeling this? Oh my God, can we turn the heat off? Research director leaned over and he goes, are you sure it's the heat? I was like, oh God, I got more going on than just quitting smoking. So, which was later confirmed by my doctor. So that's fine. So, but I'm probably, for anybody just going through menopause, probably not the best time to quit, but there's never a good time to quit. So just quit when you are ready to quit. So fast forward, I'm finally now a couple of months in, everything's good. And I started to have really weird dreams where I was committed to this. Now, I was not a sergeant at work. If you wanted to smoke, have at it. If we were talking and you wanted to go out and get a cigarette, go out and get a cigarette. If you wanted to join me, I'm happy to walk out there with you, but I'm not going to have a cigarette. And I didn't. And so then I started having dreams, and I dreamt that I was smoking, and it felt great. And I would wake up with kind of before you're kind of woken up, I would wake up and feel so guilty that I had smoked. And the relief that I felt when I realized that I hadn't smoked, that it was just a dream, was amazing and almost reinforcing. Like, all right, my brain may be wanting to off-gas this stuff, but I am hanging on. And then we'll go back to my human resource director who had quit maybe 3 or 4 years prior to me. And he had said to me, think of your head. I think I've mentioned this in a video before, maybe in passing, but he used to say, there are these strands in your mind. I don't know what they are, but strands that connect to smoking. And every time one pops up, you need to just take a big old pair of imaginary scissors and cut it. Cut that strand, cut that connection in your head. And I thought that was such a weird thing to say, and I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then the first time I had one, I can't remember what it was. It's something, really simple. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe now normally when I have a glass of wine, I have a glass of wine. I don't usually drink hard liquor. I don't care for it, although I do occasionally like a brandy. And I may have over the holidays or over somebody's birthday ordered a brandy. And first thing I wanted with it was a cigarette. And so I, kind of remembered that advice. And I was like, brandy, cigarette, cut that strand. Get rid of it. And I did that. I found myself doing that a lot. It was an amazing kind of weird mental tool that was very effective for me. Maybe not for everybody, but it was effective for me because it just reinforced in my head that I'm not going to let that strand live any longer. And if you smoke for a lot of years, there's a lot of frickin' strands that you are like Medusa with just strands of things that make you want to smoke. So, or remind you to have a cigarette. Your mind is like, oh, wait, we want that. It's going to be a lot better if we have a cigarette with that. And it's like, stop it. Cut it off. So this went on. And I remember celebrating my first year, and I was so excited, and it felt so good. And I promised myself when I quit that I wasn't going to become a horrible non-smoker, but over time you just do. And I remember, you may try not to be vocal about it, but when you're driving, I lived on in Seattle, the parking area where I parked was on an alleyway, and I remember leaving for work down that alleyway and seeing, and we had a lot of businesses on the other side, and seeing workers from these businesses out in the rain in the alleyway, huddling kind of as they could, having their cigarettes. And I would drive past like, I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. It felt so freeing. It wasn't like I was going to roll down the window and say, "Hey, quit," or "Smoking's bad for you." Like nobody knows that yet. Come on, don't don't do that. No smoker. Every smoker on the planet knows it's not good for them. What they may not realize is they are wholly and totally mentally and physically addicted. And in my case, probably more mentally than physically. Anyways, so celebrated 1 year, celebrated 2 years. And then I think I've told this story as well, but three years down the road, I think it was, I was done. I was quit. I just didn't even think about it anymore. I really didn't, and I didn't hang around. And a lot of, I realized how many non-smokers I hung around at that point. I always felt like I hung around a lot of smokers, but it ends up it wasn't. It was a tiny, minute group that smoked, and the rest of them, most of them didn't. And so suddenly I was part of that group, which was really cool too. So anyway, so I remember sitting there deciding on, I needed a new pair. I'd finally ruined my only pair of black boots that I lived in at work during the winter. And I was on Zappos, and I was looking at black boots, and I'd thrown up 2 or 3 pairs in my cart. And then I go back to the cart to kind of reevaluate which ones I really want. And as I'm looking, I think it was down to 2 pair, and I'm looking at these boots, and I'm sitting on my couch, much like I am now, looking at my computer, and I'm like, and I start kind of looking like cocktail. I have a little coffee table and a couch, and I'm kind of looking around, and I finally go, "What are you looking for?" And I was like, "Frick, I'm looking for a frickin' cigarette." I couldn't believe it. The minute it dawned on me that that's what I was looking for, a cigarette, I was like, "Oh!" And I hadn't had that issue for so long. And so I got out my big old pair of scissors and went, boom, and cut that strand. And I made it through. I didn't have any cravings or anything. It was just that kind of your brain, kind of this little off gas saying, "Hey, let's go have a cigarette." One still sitting in there, just kind of waiting for me to fired up by having to make a decision about boots. So believe me when I say it is not. It was 3.5 years. Did I say that? 3.5 years after, I think I had fully quit. I was quit. I was done. I wasn't thinking about cigarettes ever. And then this one moment, this one decision, just was enough to fire up some whatever synopsis in my brain that said, "Oh, hey, have a smoke. Just make this decision a lot more fun." And that big pair of scissors cutting off that strand was the end of that. And I can honestly say, I have not had that issue since. Knock on wood, because I think I will always consider myself a smoker, but I have quit. Most definitely. But I know, there are moments when I have had weight issues, and I'm still struggling with that. I think to myself, if you just take up smoking for, you were able to quit. So if you just take up smoking for a year, you can drop all this weight. Because smoking does keep you skinny. My job kept me skinny, but the smokes helped a lot. And every once in a while, that thought will pass my brain, and I'm like, stop it. Stop it. The smoking is so much worse for you than the extra 10 pounds you're carrying today. Let's keep that in mind. So that's my smoking story. So to anybody out there who still smokes today and who struggles with the thought of quitting, I really recommend this website. If you're someone who just doesn't want to deal with the drugs and take on an addiction to something else that doesn't really get you off the nicotine, and really want to deal with the mental aspect of it. Because I will tell you, for me, the mental part of it was the most long-lasting. It was the hardest part to get over. It took me 2.5 months to plan. And it took a special situation that I was so fortunate to have to allow me that first 2 weeks to be pretty much in a non smoking environment, in an environment that I wasn't used to on a day to day basis, that I think created a situation that allowed me to be successful. But I will tell you, there's a mental fortitude that you need to stick in your brain that says, I am done with this today, or whenever that date is that you decide. Pick a date. It's it's not like you go on vacation and say, "Oh, I'm going to go on vacation," and you leave that day. No, you you plan it months in advance. Plan it, snoop out your itinerary, figure out where you're going to fly, or you're going to drive, or you solve all these issues for months generally before you go on this vacation. So you need to treat quitting smoking pretty much the same way. You need to plan it out and arm yourself with things that will help you. Cough drops for me was a big one, and sunflower seeds. So I would literally I had a drawer to the left of where I worked at my desk that was full of cough drops and sunflower seeds. And I went for those forever. And it was funny because when I finally decided to wean off of those, probably year and a half, 2 years after the whole thing, I still, in a really stressful moment on the phone or whatever, I would flip that drawer open and realize that there were no sunflower seeds and no cough drops in there, which was always slightly disappointing. But it never made me run out and go buy another bag of cough drops because I wasn't addicted to them in the same way I'd been addicted to cigarettes. So, put a plan in motion. Convince yourself that this is what I'm going to do. Fortify yourself. And it doesn't need to be information that tells you how bad it is. You already know that. Fortify yourself with information that helps you get through the worst of it, which is other people's stories, things like hearing about people's dreams. I had a friend of mine who quit smoking maybe maybe 6 months after I had. And he goes, okay, I'm a month quit. What can I look forward to? And I said, look forward to the dreams where you're smoking. And he goes, I never smoked in dreams, even when I smoked. And I go, just saying, that was something that was really weird for me. And it wasn't 2 weeks later that he came back and said, oh my God, I just woke up from this morning feeling like shit because I had a gargantuous number of cigarettes in my dreams. It took me a while to figure out that was just a dream and that I had not smoked. And I was like, see, your brain will do anything to get you. It enjoys it. It likes to, move it through the movie in your mind and say, oh, remember when? And so, because it's an upper for whatever's in there. It's an upper for that, and it doesn't want to let it go. And so it's going to do everything in its power to not let you take power. And that's kind of the key, is you need to say, I'm sorry, I'm in charge. Today I'm in charge. So that's the deal. So if anybody is interested in attempting this journey, I wish you well. I wish you fortitude. I wish you strength and conviction, because it takes all of that, because your brain will do everything in its power to make sure it gets another cigarette. It's just you in a way over a period of time have hardwired it to do that. And what you need to do is start to disengage those wires. And it's not easy. And it's not fun. But once you disengage those wires, even 3.5 years later, get that big pair of scissors out, or a big machete, or whatever is the visual for you that you need to cut that strand off, and do it. Use those tools because they help and they work. So for anybody on that journey, I wish you so well on it. You can do this, and you're going to feel so good afterwards. So go for it. That's my Star and Flurry advice day today. Storytelling adventure. So anyways, thank you so much for stopping by. Starred Flurry out.